Hey you guys, it's Amy Gretchen. Welcome back. In this video, I'm gonna be doing a layout using Ali Edwards' March digital kit. This came out at the beginning of March, so it's available now. I will have it linked below, so you can go ahead and look at everything that is included, but it is a beautiful kit with a lot of beautiful spring colors. So I'm gonna be working on a layout today that is a 6x8, but I had actually considered doing an 8.5x11 or even a 12x12 because this design that I'm doing lends itself to any size. You could just make these digital elements bigger, any size that you want, and then you could of course cut your photos bigger also. These photos are cut to 1 3/4 of an inch, so not quite 2. I thought 2 inches was a little too big for this 6x8, but I wanted to do this size just because I want to fill up the album that I am working on. So all these little bits right here, these are all part of her digital chipboards that came in this kit. And then this, look on the bright side, this is part of the stamp. This is a stamp, this look on the bright side. And then I just went ahead and used the same color that came here. Actually, I think I changed this March Stories color. And I also, this I believe is a stamp as well that I made green, but I did pull colors from the kit. And then this story is also a chipboard set. So let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to do when putting this together is just to cut out all of my pieces. So my intent for this spread, or kind of how I designed it, is for those digital pieces that are scattered on the paper that I printed out, I am going to cut those and kind of have them as a tab that's holding the photos in place. So I am going to leave them as is, but I'm just going to cut around the edge using an X-Acto. So you'll see that coming up in just a minute, but that's what I'm doing right now. I'm getting ready to cut out not getting ready. I am cutting out all of my pieces. So I cut out all of my photos. And like I said, those photos are 1 3/4 of an inch. Sorry, I don't know the metric for that, but I know it's probably really easy to figure that out. Or you could just do it to whatever size you're used to. I was thinking about doing 2 inches, but I went ahead and I did it a little bit smaller just because of the paper. Like I said at the beginning, you could really match this to any size that you want. And so you could make your photos 3 inches if you wanted. All right, so you can see that I am using my X-Acto to cut off the bottom, and then I'm gonna do the sides, and then I'm gonna do the corners because the corners are rounded. So this would be a lot easier if these elements were square, but because they're rounded, I'm doing the bottom and then the sides, and all of them at the same time just to make it easier so I don't have to keep turning my paper. And then I'm gonna do the corner. So I'm just kind of pulling and turning at the same time. And I was actually afraid to do this, thinking that I would ruin it because then I'd have to reprint out a piece of paper. But as it turns out, it was a lot easier than I thought. And just remember, when you're cutting these out, it's okay if you are cutting into the color a little bit, because once you put the photo up into it, you're not going to see what is underneath, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to cut out the actual paper. I'd forgotten to cut it into a 6x8, and I did have some crop marks to help me with that. And because my cutter just wasn't long enough for those 8 inches, I decided to go to my bigger cutter off screen and go ahead and cut that. So you can see now as I'm adding my photos into those little tabs how it's working out with just cutting that little bit of X-Acto. So it just fits underneath, and then it looks kind of like it's on a bulletin board. So that's kind of the feel here. So you can see that I have 3 or 4 photos, and then one of those is the journaling. And this is really all about how I am embracing that winter is here because it's March and it should be spring. So we've had, in the last couple weeks, just a massive amount of snow, and we haven't had snow this winter. So it's been good because I've been dying to go up skiing and have some decent snow, but also it's frustrating because, it was in the 60s during February and January. when I would have been fine for it to be winter. So this is all about looking on the bright side. And now that we've got a bunch of snow, just enjoying it. So that's why I've got photos of snow and being up skiing and just trying to enjoy it instead of getting frustrated like I normally probably would. All right, so you can see that I have pulled over some embellishments. So because I feel like this layout is pretty flat because those digital elements were printed right onto the paper, I wanted to add like a texture. So I went through and looked at a bunch of the star embellishments that I have because I was really feeling the stars. That's kind of what I was thinking. I had a bunch of Ali Edwards. I had some from Studio Calico as well. I just keep all of them in a bin together. And I was also looking for some color. So I definitely wanted more texture and then some color that didn't have to be the exact colors that were in the kit, but just I wanted more color and not like black or gray. You can see that I had some of those stars. So I pulled over these, I don't know if they're stars or flowers or how you would see them, but I pulled over this embellishment and I had one sheet that I had already mostly used. So then I had this colorful one, which was awesome because it had some blues and some oranges, some yellows and greens. So I was able to just kind of, you know, I thought that it went really well with the spread, even though it didn't look exactly all the photos, or excuse me, all those colors didn't match exactly. So I was really happy with how that worked out and just that it felt like it added a little bit of color, or excuse me, more texture to this spread. So realizing that my photos were not in place and they would probably move around over time, I decided to go ahead and put some adhesive onto the bottom there. You can see that I went ahead and I flipped that photo around because I wanted the skis to be pointing inside of the layout, especially because that look on the bright side I realized is actually gonna go in on the right side of my, excuse me, the left side of my album. So I kind of wanted the skis to go in since that is going to be the edge of this spread. So I'm just making sure everything is even, or that it, you know, it's not crooked. It's not that big of a deal if it is. Like I said, it's kind of like a pin board. So either way, I would have been fine with it. And I also, so I added that story. I guess I didn't adhere it quite yet, but I wanted to add another one of those stars onto it. So I just went ahead and I grabbed, I think it was maybe the dark orange there because I thought it would go really great with both of those colors. All right, you guys, so moving on, that bottom corner, the bottom right corner of that 6x8 piece of paper, I really want to add something to it. I just feel like it needs something there. In hindsight, if I had realized that ahead of time, I would have used one of the digital stamps from the kit. So one of the stamps that's kind of caught my eye said, "Let's do this." And I probably would have put it in that bottom corner in some way. Maybe I could have stamped it. But because it's digital and not physical stamp, I have to do it ahead of time and print it out. But I didn't. And I didn't want to reprint and do everything over again. You know, I didn't want to have to use the X-Acto again and cut all those pieces out. So I just decided, you know what, this is basically done. I just want to add something to the corner, right? It always starts out that simple. At least I feel like it does when I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so I thought a date would be a perfect thing to add. Now, the other thing, hindsight, is when I was actually putting this together, I didn't realize that that 3x8 piece that you can see that I have on the right side was actually going to be on the left side of the album. So I think if I knew that ahead of time when I was working on this, I would have done the big date. Not the one with the 5 in it that you're seeing, but just the March 2018, because I like how it plays off of the big type. And because they weren't going to be side by side, I think that that would have worked really well. But while I was working on this, I didn't realize that it was going to, I didn't realize that 3x8 was going to be on the left side. Anyway, it would have made things so much easier. I think I just would have put that big date on there, but it gets a little bit more complicated as I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. So there's a YouTuber who creates cards. Her name is Laura Basson, and she always creates these really cute banners with sentiments on it. And I thought, you know what? Why can't I do that in my scrapbooking? So I thought about it when I was trying to maybe add the date as a banner, and I thought, you know what, why not do black? It would just add a little pop of color. And so I decided to grab over some black cardstock and to make it into a banner, and then to stamp the date using white embossing powder. So I thought that white embossing powder would be much preferable to white ink, just because it would be a lot more crisp and bold. And I don't think the ink stamps out very well. Maybe I'd have to stamp it several times. It just felt easier to use the embossing powder. So that's why I went ahead and pulled all of my embossing stuff out. So I actually really liked the way this looked. I felt like the black was pretty bold and it added a little something more to this layout. But ultimately, I felt like I liked it. I did like it, but I didn't love it. And so that's kind of the issue where I fell into, is then I kept trying to then fix it so that I would love it. So instead of using black, I thought that maybe pulling out a color from the spread or maybe from one of those tabs would be preferable. So I looked up and I saw that I had this big pad of Post-it notes that just happened to be similar to the color of blue that is in the spread. Now, it's not exactly, but it's close. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to stamp on here since I have all my embossing stuff out and check it out and see what I think. So I ended up having to do it a couple of times just because it didn't stamp out very clear. And sometimes when it, like, the embossing powder melted together, it left holes. So it just didn't stamp out, or it wasn't very clear. So I had to do it a couple of times to get it the way that I liked. So I end up cutting it out of this Post-it, and then you're going to see I'm just going to make it into a banner, and then I'll put it on my layout to see what I think. And I do like it. So this is the dilemma. I really do like the blue and I really do like the black. I actually like them both. And when I laid them out, I sat there and looked at them for quite a while. And I felt the blue was a little bit more fun, a little bit more springy. And I felt like the black felt a little bit more classic and a little bit more grounding, if that makes sense. I just kind of felt like it fit really well. I think they both fit well. So I apologize for those of you who like the black the best, because I ultimately decided to go with the blue. But I think both of them would have worked out really great. And it's just one of those things that you probably don't need to think too much about. You just need to go with your gut. So I went with the blue this time, and next time I'll probably go with the black. Anyway, you guys, moving on. So I felt like that journaling piece was getting lost. And so I decided to put a border around it just so it would feel like grounded and in place. Oh, and one last thing I decided to do also is to stitch around the outside of the entire 6x8 piece. I just felt like it needed a little something, and I like that it added texture and then also some grounding, and that the stitches went over the banner, so it felt like that it was holding that in place. Anyway, you guys, I am completely done with this spread. Really hope you like what you saw and were inspired. Definitely go ahead and check out Ali Edwards' March digital kit. It's been a lot of fun. It's a really fun spring kit. I'm looking forward to playing with it in my project life as well. All right, you guys, we will catch you in the next one. Bye.